Hello, good people of YouTube, Mountbatten here, and today we are talking about what I've commonly called the most nerfed ship in the game, the Tier 8 Premium German aircraft carrier Graf Zeppelin. Everyone's favorite Tier 8 German Premium aircraft carrier. So, what do I mean when I say that the Graf Zeppelin is the most nerfed ship in the game? Well, I'm not talking about the Graf Zeppelin that was shown off to everyone before and then subsequently changed at the last second right before release to a much more mediocre Graf Zeppelin that was on the store for I think maybe 48 hours, then got pulled and then disappeared for quite some time and then was finally replaced with a even more mediocre ship after the CV rework. I'm talking about that third released Graf Zeppelin. Well, I guess the first one was technically never released, but that third public iteration of Graf Zeppelin that we've had since her release, and how she's been kind of just thrown into the dirt in terms of nerfs. Now, the kicker here is that none of these nerfs were direct nerfs to the Graf Zeppelin. They were just global nerfs that were applied to carriers across the board because of how nutty carriers were after the CV rework, and how even today there's still a lot of tweaks going on with CVs. Just a few months ago, we got that big announcement about how they're still working on how to balance carrier spotting still. But anyway, what happened to the Graf Zeppelin? Well, like I said, she got nerfed. Shoot, I can't even count anymore how many times this ship got nerfed, but I'll run you through quickly the big changes to it. First off, we had the speed change across the board, and carriers planes got, I can't remember, it was like I think like a 5 to 10% ish across the board speed nerf to the speed of the planes, and that hurt the Graf Zeppelin a lot because her main gimmick upon her release, and still kind of today, is that her planes are fast but have very low HP for their tier. So you could boom and zoom, get in, drop a payload off on the target, and then recall your planes, and then you can have another set of planes there very quickly. And you'll see that happen here in the match you're watching in the background for sure, because that still is a strong suit of the Graf Zeppelin. It's just that it's not as good as it was before. And with that main characteristic of her planes, she was able to be a pretty, not good CV, but at least a competent one, to where you could at least get good consistent damage on targets, mainly with her torpedoes. So that got nerfed, and that hurt the Graf Zeppelin, and she didn't get any type of balancing buff to her plane's HP, not a slight buff at all. So that happened. Later on, we got the bomb reticle changes, where the AP bombers got a big nerf to their reticle, and oh man, another thing too that really killed the ship for me, speaking about the AP bombs and the reticle. So the reticle got changed, and then the diving pattern of the AP bombers got changed as well. As you watch in the background right now, the match that you're watching, you notice that the bombers, they don't take a straight down approach on the enemy ship. They dive at a fairly, no, not steep, but a steep-ish angle. That it is steep when you look at it, but beforehand, these bombers would just drop what they're doing and dive straight down to the target, which means you could drop these massive AP bombs directly on the target and make sure that they hit at least. And they've always been a little bit of a an RNG pull, but you could at least dive straight down, and if the bombs at least hit, you were pretty much guaranteed at least one citadel most of the time. Of course, if you managed to drop the bombs on a turret, on the conning tower, straight into the superstructure, you're probably going to get a bounce or just a normal pin, but if you hit flat deck, you're pretty much assured to get a citadel. They changed the way that the dive bombers dove from that straight down pattern to now this slightly at an angle pattern, which means that now these AP bombers often will just bounce off the target because, well, instead of hitting the citadel at a flat angle, they're now hitting it at a slight angle, and they'll bounce off of that, over pin somewhere inside the ship, or just pin somewhere inside the ship, and do pretty much mediocre damage instead of the shoot. Well, it used to be around 7,000 damage. That's another thing. The AP bombs got nerfed in terms of damage, and now they only do 5,800 maximum damage, which means if you get double citadels, you you won't even do 12,000 damage with these two bombs. Now, if you haven't noticed too, you don't really get secondary strikes off in the Graf Zeppelin very often because of the plane's low HP pool. You often send a squadron or two back to your ship after your launch, and then, you know, you got one squadron, maybe two, depending upon which squadron of planes you're using. If you're using like the rocket planes, you might keep two squadrons around because of how just absolutely terrible those planes are. Using the dive bombers or the torpedo bombers, you'll keep one squadron around too, kind of as a buffer squadron, because again, they gotta shoot down the full flight before it affects the squadron that's attacking. So if you keep those planes there, that, you know, you'll sacrifice two planes, but you'll get your full strike off of your torpedo bombers or your AP bombers. That's what you really gotta do with the Graf Zeppelin because of how low her plane's HP is. So that happened. A couple other nerfs happened. Again, some generic worldwide CV nerfs to where the Graf Zeppelin, until a couple of patches ago, and I am pretty late to talk about this directly on the channel, we finally got a slight buff to the Graf Zeppelin. They changed the way that the AP bombs work now to where, long story short, basically you have more of a 50-50 chance that the AP bombs actually go where they're supposed to go, and you'll be getting more citadels. And I've been playing the Graf Zeppelin over the past couple of days, and you know what? It's kind of noticeable. Is it a huge buff? Absolutely not. But it's potentially the beginning of a bit of a showing of love toward the Graf Zeppelin. Now, I know a lot of you probably clicked off of well, I don't know why I'm talking to y'all then, but I know a lot of viewers probably clicked off of this video the second they saw this was a CV video, and yes, I understand that lots of players hate CVs, but I mean, it's the Graf Zeppelin. It's one of the memeiest ships in the game. You may be wondering why, if you don't know, and I don't know how you watch this channel on a regular basis and don't know the memes about the ship. The secondaries on the ship are absolutely monstrous. The real-life Graf Zeppelin, this is a real steel ship. This ship was really constructed in real life. It was launched, but unfortunately, well, or fortunately, depending upon who you're asking, I'm just talking in terms of, you know, it would have been cool if the ship actually made it into combat. Was never complete, and I think the Russians got the Hulk and used it as a target ship or something and sunk her, but she was supposed to be a convoy raider, so they strapped on quite a few secondaries onto the ship, including 16 150mm secondary guns on top of 12 of the 105mm secondary guns. And what that means for World of Warships is that this is one of like the only carriers that you can build into its secondaries, and it's actually a viable option, not just for memes, and not like you can really build into the ship secondaries too much anymore. There's one secondary skill that they left in here, I'm convinced, just for the Graf Zeppelin, but you can build into it with the modules. So you can build into them like that, and it is a pretty darn good secondary ship. It's great for ships that pop up next to you that think they have a jump on you if they don't really know what the Graf Zeppelin is. You will absolutely obliterate them with your secondary guns, especially if it's a destroyer or a cruiser. And honestly, a lot of tier 8-ish battleships, the Graf Zeppelin can give them a run for their money if it comes down to you need to, for whatever reason, charge that battleship and try to melt it down with your secondaries. That, tied with the planes together, attacking a battleship together, can be quite easy to do. Again, with like tier 8 and below ships, tier 9 and tier 10 ships, that's something else. So with this little buff, and with the meme that is the Graf Zeppelin, the ship's been a lot more enjoyable for me over the past weeks that I've been playing her. I took her out, shoot, maybe 4 times last week, because I remember that they did buff her, and I wanted to see what it was like. But of course, with the AA and secondary bug, to where AA and secondaries are invincible now, which, if you're playing carriers, sucks. If you're playing against carriers, is freaking awesome. The ship really has been performing really well. Now, keep in mind, this is Graf Zeppelin with absolutely trash health for her planes. Planes that were easily shredded beforehand, before, you know, AA was invincible. And I've been doing rather quite well in the ship. Now, am I saying I'm, like, dominating the scoreboard? No, but I'm constantly coming in, like, top 5 on matches that beforehand you never would see the ship even be anywhere near that. Now, Graf Zeppelin's also the only CV that I myself actually have decent stats in. And I'm a terrible CV player, but I've played a lot of Graf Zeppelin just because of how goofy and fun the ship can be. So the ship, just a little buff to her AP dive bombers has helped her out quite a bit. And again, even in this era of invincible AA, I've still had some pretty darn good matches in this ship, even against tier 10 ships, including ships like the Des Moines and the Wooster and the Minotaur, because I don't know what it is, but when I want to play carrier, those ships are always on the enemy team, yet when I'm not playing carrier, playing a surface ship, and we get into a carrier match, those ships are anywhere on my team for some reason. But I don't know, matchmaking just likes to give me the finger from time to time and do that. But in terms of doing Citadel damage and getting Citadel hits more consistently, it is very much happening. I mean, shoot, in this match you should see, I believe, a handful of at least single Citadel hits and a couple of doubles as well. Which double Citadel hits beforehand, before this buff was implemented, shoot, after they messed with the reticle, that was a thing of the past, and if you got a double Citadel hit on Graf Zeppelin, it was like a religious experience. But now it's quite a bit more common from my experience, at least. So this is just kind of a look back at the Graf Zeppelin, taking a look at her after that buff, and really giving her a decent run in what is essentially the worst case scenario right now. AA is invincible, the ship constantly gets up tiered, and I'm playing it, not the best CV player in the world, and she's still doing pretty decently now. Well, not still doing, she is doing pretty decently now. Now, am I saying drop what you're doing and get this ship? No. If you wanted this ship before for the memes, you probably already had her in your port. So anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think about the Graf Zeppelin in the comments down below. I hope you guys are having a wonderful Wednesday. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 35,000 subs, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Again, I hope you guys are having a wonderful Wednesday and a wonderful week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.